Hey, this is Josh Benoit from EPLAN in the marketing department. Open Line Friday. We're here. We're back. It's been a little while since I've done this, so I feel like I'm a little rusty. I just like knocking off the cobwebs. It is October, and this is a very to me, it's a special Open Line Friday because I ran into David. He lives in a different part of the country as me. I ran into David in our home office in Schaumburg, and David said, dude, when are you going to have me on Open Line Friday? Because I want to talk about block properties. And I said, well, block properties, why would you want to talk about that? And you said that that was one of the most exciting things to you and you loved block properties. So
Yep.
we finally got together and we're able to do this. And David Rigel, who is a consultant for us here at ePlan USA. So tell us about yourself, how long you've been with the company.
Yep. Thank you, Josh. So, I'm David Ridgel. I'm working in consulting as an application engineer. I'm living currently in North Carolina in Winston-Salem, also known as Camel City to the locals. But yeah, so here at ePlan, I'm doing everything from training, technical support, and consulting. And I've been here since May of last year. It's about a year and a half or so. And I stumbled upon block properties going through the onboarding process. It was a part of the e-learning, and then I kind of shelved it for a while. I was like, okay, this may make sense. And then later, I started to run into examples where a customer needed something that couldn't be done in a typical display or property. So I was like, let me turn back into my block properties reference. And from there on, I've really found a lot of uses for them, and it's been one of my kind of favorite topics. So.
Yeah, I don't find I've never heard anybody else here that works in consulting or professional services. Nobody has ever come up to me and been so excited that they latch on to me and say, I've got to be on Open Line Friday because block properties is the way to go. I have so much
Right.
to talk about, except for you. So
Yeah.
what's all this? I mean, you're excited about it, but why is it so important? What are block
So
properties and what do they do?
right. It's not the coolest sounding thing, but it's a
It's
it
a block party.
yeah, it's a block party. That's why I wore the tie. Um but no, a block property, so our advanced users most likely know what they are. It can be an advanced topic, but essentially a block property, you can format properties together, whether direct or indirect. So direct means I'm a device and I'm looking at my own properties. Indirect means I'm a device, but I'm looking at another component that I'm connected to. I'm looking at those properties. You can also access the properties of the project and the page and so on and so forth. So there's really an unlimited amount of things you can do with them. And actually, since 2024, the new version, we actually have calculations. You can do all sort of math stuff with it. So it's really neat stuff.
Yeah, that's true. So Platform 2024 is brand new to a lot of users.
Mhm.
It just came out in August. So we've been working with Platform 2024 for a little over a month now. And the calculation function, this is something I talked to Sean Mulheron about this. He said,
Right.
whenever I told him that you were coming on to talk about block properties, he said he was again, he was excited about you coming on to talk about block properties because of the new functionality and the calculation feature that's in platform 2024. So I'll let you show us
Sure.
exactly what that means for 2024, the platform 2024, and get into the block properties and show off what you're so passionate about here.
All right. So I'm going to do a mix of some block property stuff that's been existing, and then I'll show you some of the new features. So,
Is this a remix?
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
remix to our block party.
right. I even called my project here Block Party for you. So here I have just a basic circuit. We have our potentials, our incoming potentials, a motor overload, some contacts, and a motor. So one thing you can do with the block property, I can actually read in this potential at this motor, and I can say, okay, I want to know what U1 is connected to. Well, that doesn't really do you much good, but us electrical people, we know that if we do something like this, if I swap phases at the motor, just one of the phases, now I've effectively, the motor is now in reverse, right? It's spinning the opposite direction. So what we can do is we can have EPLAN use a replacement text and say, okay, if this is connected to L1, it's spinning forward. If it's connected to L2, it's spinning in reverse. And just to show that, so let's just take it one step at a time. I'm going to open the properties of this motor. So here you'll see that we have a block property. This is the result, and then you have the block property format. So the format is where you actually tell EPLAN what to include in this result. So I'm going to click these three dots here. There's a lot going on here. If you're new to block properties, this can seem scary, but it's really not too scary. So what I'm interested in is the connection of this motor. Let me just move this so you can see. I'm interested in this U1. So I want to see what is the potential of this U1. So I'm going to go. We're going to add in connection via connection point and target number. And then here I can look at the connection points of the motor and I can see all the different targets. I'm really only concerned with this one here. This is the connection point 1 of the motor, U1. So I hit these little stairs here. This goes up to the next level. Now I'm no longer looking at the properties of the motor. Now I'm at the level of the connection. So I can go look. Let's go to connection. And then here you'll see name of potential. So I'll add that. If I hit apply, you'll see the result here. And then you can also display it, which I've already set up to display. So now you'll see that it says L1. If I do my diagonal reverse, let's say I flip these phases here. Now this says L2. Okay, that doesn't really do me much good because to me, looking at the schematic page, it's like, what does that tell us? Because this is just at the entire device. So what we can do is actually replace that text. We can tell the block property, hey, if it says L1, tell us that this is conveyor forward. If it's L2, it's conveyor reverse. So I'm going to add that in. All right. So what I'm going to do is not only that, the forward and reverse, I want to have the function text included. So I'm going to copy this format 1 to format 2, and I'm actually going to nest a block property inside of a block property because I want to take the L1 and L2, the reverse and forward, and I want to combine that with another text. But just before we do that, let's just show you what the replacement text is all about. So if I click these three dots, so here we have replacement text. We've always had this, at least as long as I've been using EPLAN. Before this version, you had to use a table that was in the project properties. Now we can actually do it locally. So each device can have its own replacement table. It makes it a lot easier to manage this type of stuff. So I can go use replacement, use the local table, and I can add an operator here. So I'm just going to say, if this block properties result equals L1, the output text will actually be, let's just say forward. Add another one if it equals L2 reverse. Okay, forward, we see that. If I flip the connection, oops, update, now it's in reverse.
Wow.
So now I want to combine that with the function text. So in EPLAN, function text is very common. It says what the device does, right? So function text is like in feed conveyor. Okay, that's good, but now how do I combine that with that block property? So I'm going to move this block property to instead of format 1 to format 2. The reason being is all this stuff is already set up to display 1. So I'm just going to do my new block property at 1. So I'm going to go to block property 1. I'm actually going to general device, and I'm going to find that function text, the in feed conveyor. We're just going to add a separator. This is just a space. Then we're going to add block property 1. So we've combined this block property, and this will be block property 2. Make sure that we have our replacement table set up here. Use local table, say equals L1 forward, L2 reverse. And since I've made this change, I need to just verify everything works. In feed conveyor reverse. Now if I just delete this, update in feed conveyor forward, you'll notice that these guys are also picking it up. So just like I've already set this up ahead of time, but I'll show you how it works. So just like we can access properties of this connection, other devices can access the properties of this device. So for example, what I've done is at this contact has 2 connection points. There's 1, there's 2. So if I want to look at that block property, I need to scan from connection point 2. So what I went ahead and did is I formatted this block property. I told it we're looking at the last function via the connection point. In this case, it was connection point 2. I found that motor. I went up to the properties, general function, and then found that block property 1. So I've nested another block property. That's the third nesting. So it can get rather complex. So sometimes it's good to add comments in here, like just like you were programming a PLC or anything, you want to have comments. Obviously, I haven't done that because we're not too many levels in, but you can go really deep here.
That brings up a good question, though, David. Whenever you said that it can, you pulled up something and you said it looks very confusing, or it might be very difficult. I think it's daunting whenever people pull up block properties and they see just if you haven't looked into it very much, it's just a jumble of words
It's a
and
lot.
it
It
is a lot, and
it
it's
seems
almost
like
like
a laundry list of things at first.
it does. So how exactly do you kind of wire your brain to look past that and understand what this really can do for you? Because my what my thoughts are about this is that it's something that is very daunting in the beginning, that once you get into it, it becomes easier and
Yeah,
easier, and it makes your whole process for what you're doing a whole lot faster, because we are about efficient engineering,
right,
and we wouldn't make something so complicated that it would take you a whole lot longer
right.
to simplify something.
The idea here is this circuit would be repeatable, so I'm not typing things multiple times. So I can just edit the function text and then it cascades to the other functions. And the question is, yeah, if you're first getting into it, it seems complicated. I would recommend everyone to check out the free e-learning. So this is available to everyone, whether or not you're an EPLAN customer or not. So here's our free e-learning, and we have a whole section about block properties. So you can do this at your own pace, and there's exercises that you can, practice and everything like that. So that's what I would recommend. I mean, this is available for everyone out there.
Now, whenever you, of course, we talked about starting in May of last year. You've been here a year and a half. At what point in time did you start really learning about block properties and getting into it? From
hmm
whenever, because you had never worked with any of this before you started with ePlan.
That's correct. So when I was going through the onboarding, there's a list of things that all of the engineers do. We take trainings and certifications. So I definitely went through the free e-learnings pretty early. And like I said, at first I was like, when am I going to use this? I just shelved the idea. And then later on, I would find a good use for it. I was like, it would be helpful to have one common text for the entire circuit. So rather than typing this 3 times, I use a block property in this circuit or in this macro, and then I create the macro, and every time I place it, I'm only changing it 1 time and everything changes. For example, let's say I copy all of this, or to make a macro. Let's call it block party motor dot EMA. I go insert this block party macro, let's insert a couple instances. Okay. It has the same text. Let's say I wanted to alter this part of it. In feed conveyor, we can say out feed conveyor. We need to update our connections. And now it updates in the other two spots. So the idea is you have one master property. In this case, in this example, that's what we're doing. We have the master property, which is the function text, and it basically drives those other properties. Same thing here. We can call this grinding conveyor. Anyone that's taken our training is familiar with these terms. These are some of the examples that we use. And that's just a very nice example. Another thing that I've done, I have the controls portion of this circuit here, and we can start associating some of these functions. So right now you'll see that this says spare input because it's looking at this function, and if it doesn't find that function text, it'll say, hey, I have a replacement text. If I see nothing there, it's going to say spare input. So let's assign this. Let's say this is supposed to be the auxiliary contact of this. So I'll assign this. Now it picks up that text. We update our connections. Now it picks up the text. And since this one is correct, I can also copy this down to the other one. So you can easily copy this down to here. Boom, boom. This guy here is looking for its main function, so we'll need to associate that. Looks like it already is, but I'm going to associate these guys. Update connections, and then now, boom.
So really,
here
a lot of this is it's taken the redundancy out of going from each really part of it to label, because whenever you're having to do that over and over and over, it really that's I think that's where number one, mistakes happen. You get bored with the project, and then you start that's really the mistakes overall comes from boredom or lack of focus, and it's because you're
right.
doing the same thing and you're tired of it and it's monotonous.
There's the human element, right? So this it may take some time to pre-configure it to your standard, but the idea is everything is driven from one place. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 instances of this text, all driven from this. So let me go ahead and make a change. We'll just call this pump 1, update connections, and then everything changes. So the PLC inputs and outputs, they're reading in that property. Yep, so what's happening here is since this is all connected together, if I move this guy, it's still going to find the target eventually because it's looking, it looks, and then it goes up here, then it finds it. So that's what's happening. In the real world, your circuit would probably have more going on. So for example, if I put a terminal, because right now that's just an infinite loop. There's no source and target. Because EPLAN is going to scan for that target, right? Whether if it doesn't find it on the first case, it's going to go up and it says, oh, I didn't find it here, but I'm going to go find it up there. So now this should definitely correct the behavior. So if I was to move that spare input, because it's finding this as the target, this doesn't have that block property configured. And what's important to note is the way I did it, it's not like this is the only way or the right way.
Right.
It's just, it goes to show you can really do anything with it. Sometimes it's good or bad because you have to consider all the possibilities like we saw here. Oh, it didn't find this target and it goes and finds the next one. I don't want that. So how do you mitigate that? So
I think this is why consulting is so important too, because someone comes to you, a customer comes to you, you have been through all of the ins and outs and figured out the wrong way to do things or the
Right.
alternate way of doing things. And so you make it much easier and get much more right to the point whenever they have,
Hmm.
different problems along the way. Maybe they have the same problem with their macros over and over and over. You can troubleshoot a lot easier since you've seen just about every scenario there is.
Right. And it's one of those things. Is block properties, does it make sense for everyone? No, probably not. In some cases, if you have a really small design, this may be a lot of configuring and you don't get your return on investment. But in some cases, it does make sense. But, like the good thing is you can do anything with it, but sometimes that can be the challenge because you really have to test all these possibilities, keep your notes, but they can really do a lot for you. When you have standards. I've seen, here's an example that I had in real life. We had a customer that wanted to, it's very common for people to have these sort of letter identifiers for their type of discipline in their drawing. So they have E for electrical, M for mechanical, and they want to display that in their title block. And sometimes they even want to display it in the row numbers. And this is one of the things that EPLAN normally with the normal property cannot do. So it finds a row number, which is completely um, numeric, right? Even if you add the page, the way to work around it, you would have to have a letter element in the page. But if you don't want that and you want to do it with the structure identifier, you need to use a block property. So I actually made a plot frame here. So instead of the page name, I did a block property here. And if I look, you don't see how it's formatted because you have to format this at the project level. So in the project itself, I formatted block property one page. There's hundreds of different block properties you can use. As you can see, this standard EPLAN engineering standard project comes with several that are formatted. A lot of times you don't even have to worry about it in the background. But so for this example, I'm looking at the page property user defined structure. In this case, those are my E's, my M's, my discipline that I'm using. And then I just pull in the page number. So this is a basic example. I'm just combining two properties into one, basically.
Gotcha.
So and then I just changed inside of the plot frame. I just replaced these page ones with the block property one. So if I change just let me get out of my macro project. If I change this plot frame here, instead of the standard EPLAN engineering, I made my own little copy. Now I can see I have that E there.
Hmm.
If I make more pages, let's say I make a new one. This is E 200, blah, blah, blah. Let's say you have a fluid page. This is for pneumatics, hydraulics. If I wanted to change the structure, call this F. And now it has the F element.
Wow. Now, you played around with the Platform 2024 calculation function, and I know that in the past, because this is why it was addressed, the voltage drop because of cable length, that was a big problem before, wasn't it?
Yes. Yep. So that's one of the exercises in our update training. So
Okay.
we have an update e-learning. So some people might have access to that. So in the cable, you have a length, right? I could say this
Hmm.
is 20 feet. And you could define the block property to obviously look for the voltage drop, right? V equals IR. So I can use that formula to determine the drop, depending on the length of the cable, right? You would need some sort of knowledge about the resistance, right, along the way, but and the current and all that.
So, David, whenever a customer comes to you, what do you feel like is the most common question that they have about block properties?
So it depends on the context. So sometimes there's a turnover with an engineer that left and the new guy's picking up, and they're trying to find out what what does this all mean, right? Because someone might not have left notes. It's just like if you inherit a PLC program and there's no comments. So as you can see, block properties, our examples were rather basic actually, because you can have, I've heard of block property formats that have 70 different levels to them.
Wow.
So it can be that can be just the main question. What does this do? And why does this one work and this one doesn't? So sometimes you run into like a support topic, right? Like what is causing this circuit to break and this one works? Another time is, hey, I want to combine these properties. How do I do this without, you know, breaking breaking my brain? So a practical basic example, this is probably one I could have shown earlier. This is one of my favorites. So if I place a connection, let's say I want to define the color, blue, cross section 18 gauge, okay, 18 blue. So the nice thing is these are actually already formatted. Our engineering standard team formatted this in that way. What they did is they take the cross section and then they basically dock it. There's another way to do this is with the block property, because sometimes you may want to have the little number, the pound symbol before the number there. So I can affect that like this. Say I go to the format of the block property. I'm going to go to connection, cross section, diameter. Let's do 18. And then I want to add a pound sign before it. So I add a separator, other characters, number sign. We'll just move that up. Separator, other character space. We'll move that below it. So it'll go in that order. Now I want to add the color, blue. So there, that is the result. And now I could change this. So I could just delete this, change this to block property 1. And now I'm getting that, right? So
Hmm.
it's just a different way to do it. Sometimes instead of having to really fix the positions of properties, you can just use block properties and create that separator in there. Like a lot of times in a plot frame, you'll see this, page 1 of whatever. So in that case, you're placing one property, then you're placing static text of, and then you're placing 7. That works fine, but sometimes you can use a block property to make your life a little easier. You can just make all of that one property and all the spacing, it'll be automatic. So you don't have to worry about placing 3 different text items. So
So
there's,
basically, this is just a way more efficient way of making notes about what you're doing and having different triggers play off of each other.
yep, like I said, unlimited possibilities. It's anything from accessing a connected functions properties, combining that with a local function properties, or indirect and direct as we call it. Um, Combining elements of properties together to display a certain way that may not be default in EPLAN. So unlimited possibilities with block properties, and yes, it can definitely raise your efficiency, because all these different results that you see, you can also have these reported. So rather than report my normal function text, I can replace it with block properties in my device tag list, and then it will output and say, hey, this device is pump 1 forward, this one is as well, blah, blah, blah. And it goes from there. You can use them for filtering, reporting, anything.
I think
So
this is a successful block party. I really do.
I hope so.
Was the party as I guess rowdy as you thought it would be?
I think it was, man. You're a good time.
You can always find David on LinkedIn. Just do a search for David Rigel on EPLAN. You used to do a lot of really cool videos, and I hope that you start doing those again because I thought that you
Yeah,
did a fantastic job of explaining things,
right.
whether it be block properties or anything else that you just on a whim think, well, maybe we might need a video on this. So always entertaining.
I have
So
some competition now with Uncle Bruno, so I gotta step up my production quality. He's got
yeah, I agree. I agree. You need to get a graphic artist in there to help you out with some things and a video editor so you can be on Bruno's level, right?
yeah, he's got a whole team over there. It's
That's
hard to compete
crazy.
with that.
Hey, thanks so much for being on Open Line Friday. I really appreciate it. We'll have you on again soon, okay?
All right, man. Have a good day.